The ship screamed through Earth's atmosphere like a dying star. Metal groaned and twisted as the vessel fought against gravity and wind. Inside the cockpit, Hana gripped the controls with clawed hands that shook with fear. Warning lights flashed red across every surface. The engines were dead. They were falling. "Brace for impact," Taeyang shouted from behind her. His deep voice cut through the chaos. He was their commander, a warrior with crimson scales that gleamed even in the emergency lighting. His wings were folded tight against his back as he secured himself to his seat. Hana pulled hard on the controls, trying to angle the ship toward something, anything that might save them. Through the viewport, she saw only white. Snow and ice stretched endlessly below them. This planet called Earth was supposed to be beautiful, full of life and color. All she could see was frozen death. "I can't slow us down enough," Hana cried. Her azure scales had gone pale with terror. She was young, barely past her training cycles. This was supposed to be a simple exploration mission. Behind them, Minho worked frantically at the engineering console. His claws moved across holographic displays, trying to coax even a whisper of power from the dead engines. "The core is completely offline," he said, his voice steady despite their situation. "We have no thrust. No shields, nothing." Jiwon, the eldest among them, sat quietly in the navigator's seat. Her silver scales bore the scars of 100 voyages. She had seen much in her long life, but she had never imagined dying on an unknown world. "Aim for the flattest area you can find," she told Hana gently. "Give us a chance." The ground rushed up to meet them. Hana screamed as she pulled back on the controls with all her strength. The ship's nose lifted slightly, just enough. They hit the ice at a terrible angle, skipping once, twice before the belly of the ship carved a deep trench through the frozen surface. Everything became noise and violence. Metal shrieked. Equipment tore free from mountings and flew through the cabin. Taeyang felt his harness dig into his chest as the ship tumbled. His wings snapped painfully against something hard. The world spun and spun until finally, mercifully, everything stopped. Silence fell like a blanket. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Taeyang groaned and released his harness. "Report," he managed to say. "Is everyone alive?" "I think so," Hana whispered. She was crying, tears streaming down her scaled face. "I think I kept us alive." "You did well," Jiwon said, reaching over to touch the young pilot's shoulder. "We survived. That is all that matters now." Minho dragged himself up from where he had fallen. He tried to stand and immediately collapsed with a roar of pain. His left leg bent at a wrong angle. "Broken," he gasped. "My leg is broken." Taeyang moved to help him, ignoring the sharp pain in his own wings. He could feel that something was torn, damaged. He might never fly again, but that concern was for later. Right now, they needed to assess their situation. The emergency door had been damaged in the crash, but Taeyang forced it open with his superior strength. The moment he did, cold air rushed in like a living thing. It bit at his scales, stole the breath from his lungs. He had never felt anything like it. The Dravathi came from Kalis, a desert world orbiting twin suns. Their bodies were made for heat, built to absorb and radiate warmth. This cold was alien, hostile, deadly. "We need to close that door," Jiwon said, already shivering. "Quickly." But Taeyang stood in the doorway, looking out at their new prison. Snow fell from a gray sky. Wind howled across endless ice. There was nothing out there. No shelter, no life, no hope. Just white emptiness stretching to the horizon in every direction. "Where are we?" Hana asked, coming to stand beside him despite the cold. "Somewhere remote," Taeyang answered. "Somewhere nobody will find us." They closed the door and gathered in what remained of their ship. The heating system was damaged, barely functioning. The distress beacon had been crushed in the crash. Their food supplies, carefully packed for their metabolisms, were mostly destroyed or scattered across the ice outside. Minho sat against a wall, his broken legs stretched out in front of him. Jiwon had used emergency medical supplies to stabilize it, but he was in obvious pain. "I need to see what I can salvage," he said. "If I can reach the engineering bay, maybe I can restore some systems." "Not with that leg," Taeyang said firmly. "I will go. Tell me what to look for." Over the next hours, Taeyang made several trips through the wrecked ship. Each time, the cold bit deeper. His scales, designed to hold heat, were losing their warmth. He found some supplies, a few ration packs, some tools, pieces of their equipment that might be useful. But the core systems were destroyed. The engines were dead metal. The communication array was in pieces. Night came quickly on this frozen world. The temperature dropped even further. The four Dravathi huddled together in the main cabin, using their own body heat and the failing ship's systems to stay alive. But Taeyang could feel the cold seeping in. It was patient. It was hungry. It would kill them slowly. How long can we survive? Hana asked quietly. Minho had been doing calculations in his head despite the pain. Our biology can withstand cold for a limited time, he said. But this temperature, without proper heating, without food designed for us, maybe 2 weeks, perhaps less. Will anyone come for us? Hana looked at Taeyang with desperate hope. Taeyang wanted to lie to her. He wanted to give her comfort, but he was a warrior, and warriors dealt in truth. The Empire believes we were destroyed in space, he said. The distress beacon never activated before we hit atmosphere. They have no reason to search for us here. They do not even know this planet exists. Jiwan nodded slowly. She had suspected as much. Then we are alone. That first night was the longest any of them had ever experienced. They took turns keeping watch, making sure the heating system did not fail completely. They rationed their small amount of remaining water. They tried to stay positive, to plan, to hope. But in the darkness, with the wind screaming outside and the cold pressing in from all sides, hope felt like a fragile thing. Taeyang lay awake, feeling his torn wings throb with pain, and wondered how long it would take. Would they freeze slowly, growing weaker each day? Or would one of them simply not wake up one morning? He looked at his crew, his responsibility, and felt the weight of failure crushing him. He was their commander. He was supposed to protect them. Instead, he had led them to die on a frozen ball of ice at the edge of explored space. The wind howled. The ship creaked, and somewhere out in the endless white, death waited patiently for its prey. 5 days passed like a slow nightmare. Each morning, Taeyang woke surprised that they were all still alive. Each night, he wondered if this would be the last time they fell asleep. The ship's heating system was dying. Minho had tried everything he could think of to repair it, dragging himself through the wreckage on his broken leg, refusing to give up. But even his brilliant mind could not create power from nothing. The ship was dead. It was becoming nothing more than a metal tomb. Hana had tried to fly on the second day. She needed to see what was around them, needed to know if there was anything beyond the endless ice. But when she spread her wings, she screamed in agony. The cold had damaged the delicate membranes. Ice crystals had formed in the tissue. She fell back into the snow, sobbing, and Taeyang had carried her back inside. Now she sat in the corner, her wings wrapped around herself, staring at nothing. She had not spoken in 2 days. The food was gone. They had eaten the last ration pack that morning, sharing it 4 ways, even though it was barely enough for one. Their stomachs ached with hunger. Their bodies, designed for the hot sands of Kalis, were shutting down in this frozen hell. Minho's leg was infected. Despite the medical supplies, despite Jiwon's careful treatment, something had gotten into the wound. His scales around the break had turned dark. Fever made him shake and sweat even in the freezing cabin. He drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling about equations and engine repairs. "We need to talk," Jiwon said on the evening of the 5th day. Her voice was gentle but firm. She looked at Taeyang with eyes that held centuries of wisdom. "We need to face the truth." Taeyang knew what she meant. He had been avoiding this conversation, clinging to hope like a drowning man clings to debris. But hope had not saved them. Hope had not brought rescue or warmth or food. "No one is coming," Taeyang said quietly. "We all know this now." Jiwon nodded. "We have perhaps a week left. Maybe less. Minho is very sick. Hana is broken in spirit. You and I grow weaker by the hour. It is time to accept what is coming." "Accept death?" Taeyang's voice rose with anger. "Just surrender? We are Dravathi. We are warriors and explorers. We do not simply lie down and die. We have fought," Jiwon said calmly. "We have struggled. We have done everything possible. But some battles cannot be won with strength or will. Sometimes the honorable thing is to accept defeat with dignity." Taeyang wanted to argue, to rage, to refuse. But deep in his heart, he knew she was right. They had no options left. No clever solutions. No last-minute saves. The cold was going to kill them, and nothing they did would stop it. That evening, Jiwon gathered them all together. Even Minho, burning with fever, was lucid enough to understand what was happening. She began the Vigil of Embers, an ancient Dravathi tradition for those facing certain death. We came from fire, Jiwan began, her voice taking on the formal cadence of ritual. From the sacred heat of our twin suns, from the warm sands of our birth world, from the thermal vents where our ancestors first learned to speak and dream. We returned to silence, the others responded, even Hana joining in with a broken whisper. It was a call and response they had all learned as children. Speak now of what you remember, Jiwan said. Share the warmth of memory, for it is all we have left to carry into the dark. Minho spoke first, his words slurred by fever but sincere. I remember the engineering academies on Kalis Prime, the sound of student claws on metal, everyone working together to build something new. I remember my first solo engine repair, how proud I felt. I remember believing I could solve any problem if I just thought hard enough. He laughed bitterly. I could not solve this one. You tried, Taeyang said. You gave everything. There is honor in that. Hana was crying again, but she forced herself to speak. I remember my first flight. The moment my wings caught the thermal currents rising from the great vents. I remember how free I felt, how the whole universe seemed open to me. I thought I would fly forever, seeing new worlds, new wonders. Her voice broke. I never imagined this. You flew us true, Jiwon said, touching the young pilot's face. You saved us in the crash. Without your skill, we would have died on impact. You gave us these extra days. That matters, Jiwon spoke next. I remember too much. Centuries of voyages, of discoveries, of meeting new species and learning new ideas. I remember my mates long gone to dust. I remember my children, grown and scattered across the empire. I remember thinking I had seen everything the universe had to offer. She looked around at the frozen walls of their prison. I was wrong. There is always something new, even at the end. Finally, all eyes turned to Taeyang. He sat silent for a long moment, struggling with emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. He was their commander. He was supposed to be strong, unbreakable. But what use was strength now? I remember my oath, he finally said. When I became a commander, I swore to protect my crew, to bring them home safely from every mission, to let no harm come to those under my command. His voice turned harsh with self-hatred. I have failed that oath. I led you here. I could not save you. I could not protect you from this. Stop, Hana said suddenly. Her voice was stronger than it had been in days. You did not fail us, Commander. The ship failed. The engines failed. Luck failed. But you never did. You gave us hope when we had none. You tried everything. You would die for us if it would help. That is not failure. Minho nodded weakly. She is right. This is not on you, Taeyang. Sometimes things just happen. Even to warriors. Even to the strong. Taeyang felt something break inside him. Tears came hot against his cold scales. He had been holding them back for 5 days, being strong for his crew. But they did not need his strength anymore. They needed his truth. I remember home, he whispered. I remember the heat. The blessed, wonderful heat of our suns. I remember how good it felt on my wings after a long flight. I remember gathering with my family at the thermal pools, sharing stories and laughter. I remember feeling warm. They sat together in the growing darkness. The heating system gave its last gasp and died. True cold flooded the cabin, the kind of cold that reached into bones and squeezed. But they huddled close, sharing what little warmth their bodies still generated. They talked through the night, sharing more memories. Funny stories from their training. Stupid mistakes they had made as younglings. Dreams they had held for the future. As dawn broke over the frozen wasteland, gray light filtering through the frost-covered viewports, they fell silent. There was nothing left to say. They had made their peace. They had accepted what was coming. Taeyang looked at his crew, his friends, his responsibility. Minho was barely conscious, his fever raging. Hana had stopped shivering, which was a bad sign. Jiwan sat with her eyes closed, breathing slowly, conserving energy. He wondered which of them would go first. He hoped it would be quick. He hoped they would not suffer more than they already had. The wind howled outside. The ship creaked and groaned. And 4 Dravathi waited for the end, together in the cold, far from the warmth of home. Doyen stared at his computer screen with growing confusion. The thermal readings made no sense. 7 days ago, his instruments had detected a massive heat signature appearing suddenly on the glacier, about 15 kilometers from his research station. It had been so intense that he thought his equipment was malfunctioning, but the signature was real. And now it was fading. He was alone at the station, which was normal for this time of year. The remote Iceland research facility monitored climate data, ice flow, and atmospheric conditions. It was boring work usually. Just Doyen, his equipment, and endless white emptiness. He was a glaciologist from Seoul, more comfortable with data than people. He had volunteered for this isolated posting because he loved the silence, the pure science of it. No distractions, no noise. Just him and the ice, but these readings bothered him. They bothered him enough that he kept checking, kept monitoring. A massive heat source that appeared suddenly and then slowly died over 12 days? That was not natural. That was not a volcanic vent or a thermal anomaly. That was something else. Doyun made a decision that probably was not very smart. He packed emergency supplies into his snowmobile, checked the weather reports, and headed out toward the heat signature. He told himself he was just being thorough. Good science meant investigating anomalies. The truth was simpler. He was curious, and curiosity had always been his weakness. The journey took 3 hours of careful driving across dangerous terrain. The glacier was full of hidden crevasses and weak ice. One wrong move could send him plunging to his death. But Doyun had been here for 2 years. He knew the ice like some people knew city streets. When he finally saw it, he stopped the snowmobile and just stared. A ship, a massive alien ship embedded in the ice. Doyun's scientific mind tried to process what he was seeing. The design was wrong for any human-made vessel. The materials were strange, reflecting light in ways that metal should not. Parts of it were clearly damaged, torn and twisted from a violent impact. His hands shook as he approached on foot. This was first contact. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. And somehow, impossibly, Doyun was alone for it. He found an opening in the hull, a door that had been forced open from the inside. He called out in Korean, then in English, then just made noise trying to announce his presence. No response came. Doyun climbed inside. The interior was dark and cold. His flashlight beam cut through the shadows, revealing strange technology and frozen surfaces. He moved carefully, aware that he was trespassing, that whatever had crashed here might not be friendly. He found them in what looked like a main cabin. 4 creatures huddled together in the center of the room. Dragons. His mind could not come up with any other word. They looked like the dragons from old Korean legends, but wrong. These had scales that caught his flashlight beam in iridescent patterns. They had wings folded against their backs. They had intelligent eyes that watched him with no hope in them. One of them, the largest with crimson scales, made a sound. Not quite a growl, not quite words. A warning, maybe, or just an acknowledgement of his presence. Doyun stood frozen. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get help, to call someone official who could handle this. But he saw the way they were huddled together. He saw the frost on their scales. He saw one of them, the smallest with azure scales, shivering violently. They were dying. The scientist in Doyun observed everything. The emergency medical kit partially used and discarded. The empty containers that must have held food. The damaged heating system in the corner. The way one of them, with ordinary scales, had his leg positioned at a wrong angle. The human in Doyun made a choice. He slowly removed his backpack, moving carefully to show he meant no harm. The large crimson one watched him with eyes that were alert despite obvious weakness. Doyun could see intelligence there, and wariness and resignation. Doyun pulled out a thermal blanket, the kind used for emergency hypothermia treatment. He held it up, then gestured at them, trying to communicate. The creatures looked at each other, some silent conversation passing between them. Finally, the crimson one made a gesture that might have been permission or might have been simply too tired to care. Doyun approached slowly. He could feel the cold radiating from their bodies, which was wrong. Living beings should generate heat. These creatures were losing their fight against the temperature. He spread the thermal blanket over the smallest one, the azure-scaled creature who was shivering. She made a sound of surprise, then pressed closer to the metallic fabric. The others watched intently. Doyun pulled out more supplies. Another blanket. Some chemical heat packs that would generate warmth when activated. He handed them over, showed them how to crack the packs to start the reaction. The one with the injured leg took a heat pack with shaking claws. When warmth flooded from it, his eyes went wide. He pressed it against his chest and made a sound that might have been relief or gratitude. Doyun looked at the injured leg and frowned. Even without medical training, he could see it was badly set and infected. He gestured at his own leg, then at the creatures, then at his medical kit, asking permission. The Crimson One looked at him for a long moment. Then he spoke, actual words in a language Doyen could not understand. But the tone was clear enough. Do what you can. Doyen worked carefully. He cleaned the wound as best he could, applied antibiotics that might or might not work on alien biology, and rewrapped the leg properly. The injured creature never made a sound, though Doyen could see pain in his eyes. When he was done, Doyen sat back. 4 alien creatures stared at him. He stared back. The absurdity of the situation hit him all at once. He was in an alien spaceship on an Iceland glacier, treating dragon-like beings with a first aid kit. And nobody in the world knew this was happening. He laughed. He could not help it. The sound echoed in the cold chamber. The smallest one, the azure-scaled female, made a sound back. It was not quite a laugh, but it was close, almost like she understood the madness of it all. Doyen tried to communicate through gestures. He pointed at himself. Doyen, he said clearly. He repeated it several times. The Crimson One seemed to understand. He pointed at himself and made a sound. Taeyang. Then he pointed at the others. Hana, Minho, Jiwan, names, they had names. Doyen repeated them, committing them to memory. Taeyang, the leader. Hana, the young one. Minho, the injured one. Jiwan, the silver-scaled elder. He tried to explain that he would come back, that he had more supplies at his station. He gestured a lot, probably looking foolish, but something must have gotten through because Taeyang nodded slowly. Doyen left more heat packs and both thermal blankets. He showed them his food rations, but they did not seem interested. Different biology, different dietary needs, he guessed. Before he left, he looked back at them one more time. They were wrapped in his blankets now, huddled around the heat packs like they were precious treasures. Hana watched him with something that might have been hope. The journey back to his station took longer because his mind was racing. He had found aliens. Dying aliens. Aliens that no one knew about. If he reported this, what would happen? Would the government swarm this place? Would these creatures be taken away, studied, possibly hurt? They had looked at him with trust. Taeyang had allowed him to help Minho. They were vulnerable, desperate, and alone. Doyen made his second choice of the day. He would not report this, not yet. Not until he knew these beings would be safe. He would help them himself. It was crazy. It was probably illegal. It was definitely dangerous. But Doyen had spent his whole life playing it safe, following rules, being the quiet scientist who never caused trouble. Maybe it was time to be something else. He reached his station as the sun was setting, painting the ice in shades of orange and purple. He looked at his supplies, his equipment, his comfortable little shelter. Then he started planning. 4 dying aliens needed help, and somehow, impossibly, Doyen was the only one who could give it. He did not sleep that night. He made lists, checked supplies, and figured out how much he could spare without starving himself. He looked at heating equipment and wondered if it could be transported. He studied basic medicine and hoped that what worked for humans might work for dragons. When dawn came, Doyen loaded his snowmobile again. This time with more supplies, more blankets, and a portable heater that ran on batteries. He was going back. And this time he was bringing hope. Doyen returned the next morning with a snowmobile packed so full he worried it might tip over. He had brought everything he could think of. 3 portable electric heaters, a dozen thermal blankets, his entire supply of heat packs, medical supplies, and food. Lots of food, even though he had no idea if they could eat human meals. When he entered the ship, he found them exactly where he had left them, still huddled under his blankets. But they looked different, more alert. Hana lifted her head when she heard him approach, and something like relief crossed her face. Taeyang stood up, moving slowly. He was clearly weak, but he positioned himself between Doyen and the others. Still protective, still a leader, even when dying. Doyen raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal peaceful gesture. Then he started unpacking his supplies, showing them each item. The portable heaters made Taeyang's eyes go wide. When Doyen plugged one into his portable generator and warm air began flowing, all 4 dragons moved closer. The change was immediate. They held their clawed hands over the heater, absorbing warmth like plants absorb sunlight. Minho actually made a sound that could only be described as a purr. Jiwon closed her eyes and seemed to meditate, just experiencing heat again. Over the next hour, Doyun set up all 3 heaters in strategic positions around the cabin. He showed them how to adjust the settings where not to touch because it would burn them. They learned fast, these creatures, intelligent and adaptable. Hana approached him cautiously while he worked. She pointed at the heater, then at him, then made a complex gesture with her claws. Her face showed such gratitude that Doyun felt his chest tighten. "It is okay," he said softly, even though she could not understand the words. "It is okay." The language barrier was a problem. Doyun pulled out his tablet and opened a translation app, even though he knew it would be useless. These creatures did not speak any Earth language, but maybe they could use pictures. Jiwon seemed to understand what he was trying to do. She moved closer, ignoring Taeyang's protective rumble. She pointed at things in the cabin and made sounds. Then she pointed at the tablet when Doyun showed her pictures, connecting images to her words. They spent 2 hours like that, building a basic vocabulary through pictures and gestures and patience. Jiwon was clearly the linguist of the group. She picked up Korean words with frightening speed, repeating them carefully. Warm, cold, food, water, help. By the end of it, they could communicate in a broken, childlike way. It was not much, but it was something. Doyun tried to explain about his research station. He drew a picture of a building, showed them it was warmer there, safer. He tried to ask if they could move. Taeyang looked at Minho's injured leg, then at Hana, who could barely stand, then at Jiwon, who was so weak she shook. He spoke in his language, and though Doyun could not understand the words, he understood the meaning. They were too damaged to move far. Doyun had expected this. He made a gesture to show he would come back, would bring more supplies. But even as he made the promise, he knew it was not enough. The ship was still freezing. The heaters helped, but they were not a permanent solution. These creatures needed real shelter. Before he left, Doyun tried to share food. He had brought instant ramyun, rice, dried fish, and various other Korean staples. The dragons sniffed everything cautiously. Most of it they refused, but Hana tried the ramyun after Doyun prepared it with hot water. Her reaction was immediate. Her eyes watered, and she made a sound of distress. Too spicy. Way too spicy. But then she tried another bite, and despite the tears streaming down her scaled face, she seemed to like it. She ate the whole cup while the others watched in amazement. "Spicy," Doyun said, pointing at the ramyun. "Spicy, but good?" "Spicy," Hana repeated carefully. "Good." Then she made a gesture that clearly meant more. Doyun laughed and gave her another cup. He left them with a week's worth of his ramyun supply, even though it meant he would be eating very little himself. Over the next 4 days, Doyun made the journey back and forth multiple times. Each trip he brought something different. More batteries for the heaters, better medical supplies, different foods to see what they could eat, blankets and insulation materials to help seal the damaged parts of the ship. He also brought books with pictures, children's books with simple Korean words. Jiwon studied them intensely, teaching the others. By the 4th day, they could have basic conversations. "Why help?" Taeyang asked on that 4th evening. He struggled with the Korean words, his accent making them almost unrecognizable, but Doyun understood. "We strangers. Different. Why?" Doyun thought about it. How could he explain? He tried simple words. "You need help. That is enough." "Enough?" Taeyang repeated, confused. "Where I come from," Doyun said slowly, making sure each word was clear. "We have a saying, if someone needs help, you help. No other reason needed." Jiwon translated for the others in their language. They discussed it among themselves, their voices rising and falling in musical patterns. "Your people good?" Hana asked, looking at Doyun with her large eyes. Doyun laughed bitterly. "No. My people complicated, some good, some bad. Like all people, I think." "But you good," Minho said. His leg was healing better now with proper treatment. He could put weight on it without screaming. "You help when you not have to." Maybe I am just curious, Doyen joked. Scientist, you know. Find aliens, want to study them. But Taiyang shook his head. No. You bring food. Take food from yourself, we see. You get thin. He pointed at Doyen's face. You give too much. It was true. Doyen had been rationing his own supplies heavily to make sure he had enough to share. He was hungry most of the time now. But what else could he do? Let them starve? It is fine, Doyen said. I have enough. They did not believe him, he could tell. But they did not argue either. They could not afford to argue. They needed what he brought too desperately. On the 5th day, Doyen broached the subject he had been thinking about constantly. My station, he said, gesturing in the direction of his research facility. Warm there. Safe. You come? He had been preparing for this. He had a plan for how to transport them, had been gathering materials to build a sled system, but he needed them to agree first. Taeyang looked at his crew. They had a long conversation in their own language. Finally, he turned back to Doyen. Far? 15 kilometers, Doyen said. He showed them on his tablet map. Minho cannot walk so far. Hana cannot walk so far. Jiwon too weak. I know, Doyen said. I pull. With snowmobile. One at a time. Taiyang's eyes widened as he understood. Dangerous. For you. For us. Yes, Doyen admitted. But more dangerous to stay. Ship getting colder. Heaters not enough forever. Batteries run out. At station I have geothermal power. Heat that never stops. Never stops? Hana said hopefully. Always warm? Always warm, Doyen confirmed. They discussed it for a long time. Doyen left them to decide, going outside to check his equipment. When he came back, Taeyang was waiting. We go, the dragon said simply. Trust you, have no choice, but also, trust you. Doyen felt the weight of that trust settle on his shoulders. These beings were putting their lives in his hands. If something went wrong during transport, if they got caught in a storm, if the cold got worse, they could die. And it would be his fault. I will not let you down, Doyen promised. We know, Jiwon said softly. You do not know how to let people down. We see this in you. That night, Doyen stayed with them. They shared stories through broken language and gestures. The dragons told him about their homeworld Kalis, a place of twin suns and red sand and beautiful heat. They showed him pictures on their damaged computers, images of cities that looked like nothing on Earth. Doyen told them about Earth, about Korea, about his work studying ice and climate. He showed them pictures of Seoul, of green mountains and blue oceans, of places where it was warm and life flourished. Earth beautiful, Hana said, looking at images of spring flowers. Not just ice. Not just ice, Doyen agreed. Just very cold here. As they settled down to sleep, wrapped in blankets around the heaters, Doyen felt something shift. These were not just aliens he was helping anymore. They were becoming something else. Friends, maybe. Or family of a strange sort. Tomorrow they would begin the dangerous journey to his station. Tomorrow they would risk everything on a desperate plan. But tonight, they were warm and fed and together. It was enough. The sled system Doyen built was not elegant, but it was functional. He had used materials from both his station and the crashed ship, creating a platform that could be pulled behind his snowmobile. It had sides to keep the passenger from sliding off, and was lined with every blanket and insulating material he could find. The plan was simple but exhausting. Transport them one at a time across the 15 kilometers of glacier to his research station. 4 trips, each one taking several hours. It would take 3 days minimum, maybe longer if weather turned bad. Minho would go first. His injured leg made him the most vulnerable, and he was still fighting the infection despite the antibiotics. Every hour mattered for him. Doyen helped the dragon onto the sled that first morning. Minho was heavy, much heavier than a human of similar size. His scales and dense muscle made him weigh nearly twice what Doyen expected. The snowmobile's engine groaned when Doyen tried to pull away. Too heavy? Minho asked in broken Korean, worry in his voice. "Is fine," Doyen lied. "Just slow." The journey was a nightmare. The snowmobile could barely manage the weight, and Doyen had to take a longer route to avoid steep sections. The sled caught on ice formations. The wind picked up, making visibility terrible. Twice they nearly slid into crevasses that Doyen barely saw in time. Minho lay on the sled, wrapped in blankets, watching the white landscape pass. He made no complaints, even when they hit rough patches that must have jarred his injured leg painfully. "Your world is very cold," he said at one point, his voice barely audible over the wind. "This part is cold," Doyen shouted back. "Other parts are nice, warm, beautiful. I would like to see those parts." "You will," Doyen promised, hoping desperately that he could keep that promise. 7 hours later, they reached the research station. Doyen had never been so relieved to see the small metal building. He helped Minho inside, into the main room where geothermal heating kept everything at a comfortable temperature. Minho's reaction was immediate and powerful. He collapsed onto the floor and just lay there, absorbing heat through his scales. Tears ran down his face. "Warm," he whispered. "Really warm. Thank you, thank you." Doyen gave him food and water, made sure he was comfortable, then immediately prepared for the return journey. He had to get back before dark. The others were waiting, and every hour they spent in that freezing ship was dangerous. The second trip was the next day. Hana and Jiwon together, since they were both smaller and lighter than the males. They clung to each other on the sled, looking terrified. Neither of them had been outside the ship since the crash. The endless white landscape seemed to frighten them. This journey was faster but scarier. A storm was building to the west, dark clouds promising wind and snow. Doyen pushed the snowmobile as fast as he dared, racing against the weather. They made it to the station just as the first flakes began to fall. Jiwon had to be carried inside, too weak to walk on her own. But once in the warmth, both females revived quickly. Hana cried when she felt real heat again. She spread her damaged wings experimentally, testing them. "I think they heal," she said hopefully. "With warmth, maybe they heal." Minho embraced both of them, all three dragons tangling together in a reunion that made Doyen look away. It was a private moment, family reuniting, but the moment could not last. Taeyang was still out there, alone in the ship, waiting. Doyen barely slept that night. The storm had arrived in earnest, howling wind and thick snow. He could not travel in this. He had to wait. For 2 days, the storm raged. Doyen paced his station anxiously while the three dragons recovered. They were doing better in the heat, getting stronger, eating the food he prepared, but all of them were worried about their commander. "Taeyang strong," Jiwon said, trying to reassure herself as much as Doyen. "He survive." On the third morning, the storm finally broke. Doyen packed emergency supplies and set out immediately, not even waiting for breakfast. The glacier looked different after the storm, new snow covering old landmarks. It took him an extra hour just to find the crash site. When he reached the ship, his heart sank. The entrance was nearly buried in snow. The ship was completely dark, all power finally gone. He called out as he dug through the snow, panic rising in his chest. "Taeyang! Taeyang!" No answer came. Doyen forced his way inside, his flashlight cutting through absolute darkness. The cabin was freezing, colder than before. Ice covered the walls. He found Taeyang in the center of the room, curled into a tight ball, not moving. "No, no, no," Doyen muttered, rushing forward. He touched the dragon's scales. They were cold, terribly cold, but there was a faint warmth underneath, a spark of life still burning. "Taeyang." Doyen shook him gently. "Taeyang, wake up." The dragon's eyes opened slowly. They were unfocused, distant. He tried to speak but only managed a whisper. "Cold. So cold." Doyun worked fast, wrapping Taeyang in every thermal blanket he had brought. He activated heat packs and pressed them against the dragon's core. He tried to get him to drink warm liquid from a thermos. "We need to go now," Doyen said urgently. "Need to get you warm." "Can you move?" Taeyang tried to stand but collapsed immediately. His legs would not hold him. 2 days alone in the freezing ship without heat had nearly killed him. "Cannot," Taeyang whispered. "Too weak, leave me. Save yourself." "Not happening," Doyen said firmly. He was furious at the situation, at the cold, at the universe for putting them in this position. "I did not come all this way to lose you now." He managed to half drag, half carry Taeyang outside. The dragon was huge, impossibly heavy. Doyen's muscles screamed as he got him onto the sled. His back felt like it might break. But he did not stop. Getting Taeyang secured on the sled used up all of Doyen's strength. He collapsed next to the snowmobile, gasping for air, his vision going gray at the edges. "Cannot do this," Taeyang said, watching him. "Too much, I order you. Leave me here. Go back." Doyen looked at him and laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "You are not my commander, and I am too stubborn to listen anyway. Korean curse, you know. We do not give up." He started the snowmobile and began the journey back. It was the worst trip yet. Taeyang kept fading in and out of consciousness. The cold had its claws deep in him. Doyen talked constantly, yelling over the wind, trying to keep the dragon aware and fighting. "Tell me about your home. Tell me about Kalis. Tell me anything. Just stay awake," Taeyang tried. He spoke in fragments, mixing Korean and his own language. He talked about heat and sand and flying under twin suns. He talked about his warrior training, about honor and duty. His words got more confused as they went, fever taking over from cold. Halfway back, the weather turned again. Wind picked up, visibility dropped to nearly nothing. Jun could barely see 5 meters ahead. He relied on his instruments and his knowledge of the glacier, but doubt crept in. Was he going the right way? Had he drifted off course? Taeyang fell silent. Doyen looked back and saw the dragon had stopped moving. No. Doyen stopped the snowmobile and scrambled back to the sled. Taeyang's breathing was shallow, his heartbeat faint. He was slipping away, dying right there in the snow. Doyen did the only thing he could think of. He climbed onto the sled and wrapped his own body around Taeyang, sharing his warmth, using himself as a living blanket. It was dangerous, stupid even. He could freeze himself trying to warm the dragon, but he had not come this far to fail now. "Stay with me," Doyen said fiercely, pressing close. "Your crew is waiting. Minho and Hana and Jiwan are warm and safe and waiting for you. You do not get to die. I will not let you." He stayed there for an hour, maybe more, time losing meaning in the white void. His own body heat flowed into the dragon. His fingers and toes went numb. His face hurt from the cold. But slowly, gradually, he felt Taeyang's body temperature rising. The dragon's eyes opened. They focused on Doyen, recognition returning. "You stayed," Taeyang whispered. "Of course I stayed," Doyen said through chattering teeth. "Now help me. I need you to stay conscious. I need you to fight. Can you do that?" "Yes," Taeyang said, and there was strength in his voice again. "Yes, I fight." Doyen climbed back onto the snowmobile, his movements clumsy with cold. But he drove forward, and this time Taeyang stayed awake behind him, calling out encouragement, refusing to let Doyen give up either. They found the station just as Doyen's fuel gauge hit empty. The snowmobile died right outside the door. Doyen fell off it, his legs barely working. The door opened and Minho was there, stronger now, pulling Taeyang inside. Jiwan appeared, helping Doyen. They all collapsed in the main room, a pile of exhausted humans and dragons. Hana brought blankets. Minho prepared hot food. Jiwan fussed over both Doyen and Taeyang, her healing knowledge helping them both. "We made it," Doyen said, starting to laugh and cry at the same time. "We all made it." Taeyang reached out with one clawed hand and gripped Doyen's arm. "Brother," he said in Korean, then repeated it in his own language, wanting to make sure Doyen understood. "You are my brother now." The others echoed it, all of them surrounding Doyen and Taeyang in the warm room. They had survived the impossible. They were together, they were safe. And outside, the wind howled in fury, but it could not touch them anymore. The research station was not designed for 5 occupants, especially when 4 of them were large dragon-like aliens. But somehow they made it work. The first week was about recovery. Taeyang slept for nearly 3 days straight, his body finally able to truly rest now that it was warm. Minho's leg healed properly without infection, and he started walking without limping. Hana's wings slowly recovered, the damaged tissue regenerating in the heat. Jiwan spent her time organizing everything, teaching the others more Korean, and exploring every corner of their new temporary home. Doyen's biggest challenge was food. The dragons could eat some human food, but not everything. Rice was fine. Vegetables were okay. Meat they could handle. But dairy products made them sick, and anything too processed their bodies rejected. Doyen's supply of instant ramyun became Hana's favorite meal, despite how spicy it was. She would cry while eating it, tears streaming down her scaled face, but she always asked for more. The others thought she was crazy. Why eat something that hurts? Minho asked, watching her finish yet another cup. Hurts good, Hana said simply. Reminds me I am alive. They fell into routines. Doyen still had his research work to do, monitoring equipment and recording climate data. The dragons watched with interest as he explained about glaciers and ice cores and atmospheric measurements. Your people study your own world? Jiwan asked. You do not know everything about it already? We know very little, Doyen admitted. Earth is old and complicated. We are still learning. This fascinated them. The Dravathi had mapped and studied their homeworld thousands of years ago. The idea that humans were still discovering their own planet was strange, but also refreshing. Minho helped Doyen repair some of his equipment using principles from alien engineering. A monitoring station that had been broken for months suddenly worked better than new. Doyen did not understand half of what Minho did, but he was grateful. In return, Doyen showed Minho human technology. The dragon engineer was amused by how primitive it was, but also impressed by the creativity involved. You do so much with so little, he said. Humans are resourceful. Taeyang struggled the most with confinement. He was a warrior, used to action and command. Being stuck in a small station with nothing to fight and no one to lead frustrated him. He would pace the main room, his wings twitching with need to fly. I feel useless, he confessed to Doyen one evening. My crew does not need me here. You provide everything. What is my purpose? Your purpose is to heal, Doyen said, and to be here for them. They need their commander even if there is nothing to command. But Doyen understood. He found tasks for Taeyang, physical work that used his strength. They cleared snow from around the station. They reinforced the walls. They organized supplies. It helped, but only a little. Jiwan became Doyun's closest friend among the dragons. She had centuries of wisdom and a curiosity that matched his own. They would sit up late at night talking about philosophy and science and the nature of the universe. We have encountered many species, Jiwan told him. Some advanced, some primitive. But humans are unique. You have technology barely capable of leaving your own world, yet you dream of stars. You are violent and chaotic, yet capable of great kindness. You are contradictions. Is that bad? Doyen asked. No, Jiwan smiled, an expression that took Doyen weeks to recognize on her alien features. It is beautiful. Most species we meet are predictable. Humans are surprising. Cultural exchange happened in small moments. Hana discovered Doyen's laptop had movies and shows on it. She became obsessed with Korean dramas even though she could only understand about half the dialogue. She would watch with intense focus, asking Doyen to explain plot points and cultural references. Why do they not just talk to each other? She asked during a romantic drama. If they both feel the same, why the confusion? Because humans are complicated, Doyen said. We do not always say what we feel. That seems inefficient. It is. But it is how we are. Taeyang pretended not to be interested in the dramas, but Doyun caught him watching from across the room more than once. When a particularly emotional scene played, the warrior dragon's eyes would get suspiciously shiny. The dragons introduced Doyen to their culture as well. They showed him holographic recordings from their damaged ship computer. Images of Kalis that took his breath away. Cities built around massive thermal vents. Architecture that seemed to flow like metal rivers. Art and music that was nothing like Earth's but beautiful in its alienness. They taught him about Dravathi history. They had been spacefaring for over 5,000 years. They had an empire that stretched across dozens of star systems. They valued honor, family, and the pursuit of knowledge. They were warriors but also explorers, scientists, artists. We thought we had seen everything, Jiwan said. Thousands of worlds, millions of species. But Earth surprises us. You surprise us. I am just a scientist, Doyen protested. Nothing special. You saved our lives when you had every reason not to, Taeyang said. You gave up your food, your safety, your comfort for strangers. That is special. Doyen showed them Earth music. Classical first, which they found interesting but strange. Then traditional Korean music, which caught their attention. The drums and strings seemed to resonate with something in their culture. When he played modern K-pop, Hana's reaction was immediate and extreme. She loved it. The beat, the energy, the complexity. She made Doyen teach her the words to songs even though she barely understood them. Soon, the station was regularly filled with the sound of a dragon attempting to sing Korean pop songs. She was terrible at it. her voice not designed for human music. But her enthusiasm made everyone smile. Even Taeyang, who claimed to prefer serious warrior music, would tap his claws to the rhythm. The days turned to weeks. They celebrated small victories. Minho taking his first steps without any pain, Hana successfully gliding from one side of the station to the other, her wings healed enough for short flights. Taeyang laughing at a joke Doyen made, the first time any of them had heard him truly laugh. Jiwon finishing her comprehensive Korean Dravathi dictionary, but tension simmered underneath the comfortable routine. They all knew this situation could not last forever. The dragons needed to get home eventually. Their empire would have search protocols, though the Dravathi had given them up for dead. Minho had been working on the damaged communication equipment salvaged from the ship, trying to boost its signal. And Doyen faced a growing moral dilemma. Every day he kept this secret from the world was another day of lying. Other scientists deserved to know about first contact. Governments needed to prepare. Humanity had a right to know they were not alone. But every time he thought about reporting it, he imagined what would happen. Military vehicles surrounding his station, scientists wanting to study the dragons like laboratory specimens, politicians arguing over what to do, media turning it into a circus. His friends would be taken away, possibly hurt, definitely not free. "I do not know what to do," he confessed to Jiwon one night. "This is too big for one person. You carry heavy weight," she agreed. "But you do not have to decide now. When we contact our people, when rescue comes, then the secret ends anyway. Until then, we are grateful for your protection. What if your people are angry that I hid you?" Jiwon laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "The Dravathi understand debt. You saved us. That means everything. Any leader who is angry at you would be a fool, and we do not promote fools." One evening, as they all sat around the main room sharing a meal, Minho made an announcement. "I detected something today. A signal, very faint. It might be a Dravathi search pattern." Everyone stopped eating. Hana looked terrified and hopeful at the same time. Taeyang sat up straighter, his warrior instincts activated. Jiwon closed her eyes, sending a silent prayer to whatever gods the Dravathi believed in. "Can you boost our signal to reach them?" Taeyang asked. "Maybe," Minho said. "I have been working on modifying Doyen's radio equipment. If I combine it with our communication array parts, I might create something powerful enough. But it will take time. Days, maybe a week." "Do it," Taeyang ordered, then caught himself. "I mean, if that is acceptable?" He looked at Doyen, they all did. This was Doyen's station, his equipment, his world. He had final say. Doyen thought about it. He could say no. He could delay. He could keep his friends here a little longer. But that would be selfish. They had families out there, lives to return to. They had been grieving the dragons, thinking them dead. He had no right to keep that going. "Yes," Doyen said. "Do it. Get your people. Go home." Hana made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. She moved to hug Doyen, nearly crushing him in her enthusiasm. "Thank you. Thank you for everything." "I will miss you," Doyen admitted. The station would be so quiet when they left, so empty. He had gotten used to the sound of claws clicking on metal floors, to Hana singing badly, to Minho explaining engineering concepts he did not understand, to Jiwon's wisdom, to Taeyang's protective presence. "We will miss you too," Jiwon said softly. "You gave us more than rescue. You gave us hope when we had none. You showed us that the universe still has good surprises." That night, Doyen lay awake in his small sleeping area, listening to the dragons talk quietly in the main room. They spoke in their own language, voices rising and falling in patterns that were becoming familiar. He had changed their fate. 4 beings who should have died were alive, laughing. Minho worked for 4 days straight on the communication device. He barely slept, driven by the possibility of rescue. He combined human radio equipment with salvaged alien technology, creating something that should not work but somehow did. Doyen helped where he could, mostly holding things and following instructions he did not completely understand. On the morning of the 5th day, Minho activated the modified beacon. A pulse of energy rippled out from the station, far stronger than anything the human equipment could produce alone. It was a message shot into space carrying hope and coordinates and a desperate plea. "We are here, we are alive, please find us." Then they waited. Waiting was torture. Every hour felt like a day. They tried to maintain normal routines, but everyone was on edge. Hana kept looking at the sky through the station windows. as if she could will a rescue ship into existence. Taeyang paced constantly, his warrior's discipline barely containing his anxiety. Jiwan meditated, seeking calm in ancient practices. Doyen pretended to work but mostly just watched his friends trying to memorize every detail. 2 days passed. Then 3. Doubt crept in. Maybe the signal was not strong enough. Maybe there were no Dravathi ships in range. Maybe rescue would never come. On the 4th day, Minho's monitoring equipment picked up a response. It was faint, barely there, but unmistakable. A Dravathi signal, acknowledging their distress call and providing an estimated arrival time. They would be here in less than 48 hours. The station exploded into activity. Everyone talked at once, making plans, asking questions, expressing relief and joy and fear. Hana cried. Minho laughed. Taeyang stood very still, processing. Jiwan simply closed her eyes and whispered thanks to the universe. Doyen felt happy for them, but also a growing emptiness. This was good. This was what should happen. But it meant goodbye. The next day was strange. They prepared for the rescue, but also tried to have one last normal day together. Hana insisted on watching one more drama. Minho showed Doyen the final improvements he had made to the station equipment. Jiwan gave Doyen the complete linguistic database she had created, hundreds of hours of work translating between Korean and Dravathi. Taeyang was quiet, thoughtful, spending most of his time looking out at the glacier. That evening, Taeyang asked Doyen to walk with him outside. They bundled up in cold weather gear and stepped into the freezing air. The aurora was active that night, green and purple ribbons dancing across the sky. Beautiful, Taeyang said, watching the lights. Your world is full of beauty when it is not trying to kill you. Doyen laughed. That is a good description of Earth. They walked in silence for a while. Finally, Taeyang spoke. When I was young, I was taught about honor and duty, about protecting those weaker than myself, about being strong, being a leader, never showing weakness. He paused. You showed me I was wrong. Wrong? Strength is not about never needing help, Taeyang said. It is about accepting help when it is offered, about letting others care for you. I was so proud, Doyen. I almost let that pride kill us all. If I had been alone, I would have refused your assistance, would have died honorably in that ship. He turned to face Doyen directly. You taught me that accepting kindness is not weakness, that admitting you need help is not failure. This is wisdom my people have forgotten in our strength. We have become so powerful that we forgot how to be vulnerable. I just did what anyone would do, Doyen protested. No, Taeyang said firmly. Most would not. Most would have reported us to authorities or been too afraid to help or demanded something in return. You gave everything expecting nothing. That is rare in the universe. In any species. He reached into a pouch he had been wearing. I want you to have this. He held out his commander's insignia, a metal piece carved with intricate symbols. In our culture, this represents my honor, my oath, my identity. By giving it to you, I am saying that your honor is my honor, that you are family, not by blood but by choice. Doyen took it with shaking hands. I cannot take this. It is too important. You already took it, Taeyang said. When you saved us. When you shared your food even though it meant you went hungry. When you nearly froze to death keeping me alive during that storm. You earned it 100 times over. They stood there in the cold under the alien lights and Doyen realized he was crying. I am going to miss you, he said. All of you. This station will be so empty. Then come with us, Taeyang said suddenly. Our ship will have room. You could see Kalis, see the universe. Your skills, your knowledge, your kindness, the Empire would welcome you. For a moment, Doyen was tempted. To leave Earth, to see alien worlds, to have adventures beyond imagination. But then he thought about his work, his family back in Korea, his responsibility to share what he had learned. I cannot, he said softly. My place is here. Earth needs people who understand that we are not alone, who can help prepare for first contact. You will go home and tell your people about Earth, about humans. I need to stay and tell my people about the Dravathi, about the universe we are part of. Taeyang nodded as if he had expected this answer. Then we will meet again. When our peoples make formal contact, I will come back. I will find you. That is a promise. The rescue ship arrived just after dawn the next morning. It came fast, dropping through the atmosphere with precision that spoke of advanced technology and skilled pilots. It hovered over the glacier near the station, a sleek vessel that made Doyen's breath catch. This was a real alien spaceship, not a crashed wreck, but a working example of technology centuries beyond human capability. The airlock opened and a Dravathi female descended. She was impressive with dark scales and an air of command that made even Tae-Yang straighten to attention. This was Captain Suman, the commander of the rescue vessel. She walked directly to Tae-Yang and performed some kind of formal greeting, wings partially extended, head bowed slightly. They spoke in their language, rapid and intense. Doyen could not understand the words, but he understood the emotion. Relief, joy, questions, explanations. Then Suman turned to look at Doyen. Her eyes were sharp, calculating, missing nothing. She walked over and Doyen fought the urge to step back. She was larger than Tae-Yang, radiating authority and power. She spoke in perfect Korean. "You are the human who saved my people." "I am Doyun," he managed to say. "I just helped." "You did more than help," Suman said. "You risked everything for strangers. This is noted and will be remembered." She paused. "The Dravathi Empire honors its debts. Name a price. Technology, wealth, a new world to call home? We can give you anything," Doyen thought carefully. He could ask for technology that would advance Earth by centuries. He could ask for enough wealth to live like a king. But that felt wrong somehow. "I want 3 things," he said. "First, remember Earth. When the time comes for official contact, be patient with us. We are young and probably chaotic, but we mean well." Suman nodded. "Agreed. And second, protect this place." Doyen gestured at the glacier around them. "My research is about climate and ice. Earth is changing, warming. The data I collect here helps us understand that. I need to continue this work." "We can help with that," Suman said. "Our environmental technology could assist your research." "Consider it done. Third, promise that first contact will be peaceful," Doyen said. "Do not let what happens between our people be violent. Give us a chance to meet as friends, not enemies." Suman studied him for a long moment. "You ask for nothing for yourself, only for your world and its people. This is most unusual." She performed the same formal greeting she had given Tae-Yang. "I accept your terms. When first contact comes, the Dravathi will remember the human who put others before himself." The goodbyes happened too fast and too slow at the same time, and I clung to Doyen sobbing. "You saved my life. I will never forget." Minho gripped his hand in the human way he had learned. "I left you a gift. The portable fusion battery from our ship's auxiliary systems. It will power your station for decades. Use it well." Jiwan simply hugged him, saying nothing because words were insufficient. She pressed her linguistic database into his hands, information that made him Earth's only expert on the Dravathi language. Tae-Yang was last. The warrior looked at Doyen for a long moment, then pulled him into an embrace. "Brother," he said in both Korean and Dravathi. "We will meet again. I swear it on my honor." "I believe you," Doyen said. They boarded the ship, Suman's crew helping them, medical personnel already examining them. The airlock began to close. Hana waved frantically from a viewport. Minho raised his clawed hand in salute. Jiwon pressed her palm against the glass. Tae-Yang stood at attention, a warrior's farewell. Then the ship lifted. It rose smoothly, silently, defying gravity in ways that made Doyen's scientist brain hurt. It accelerated upward, faster and faster, until it was just a bright point against the dawn sky. Then it was gone. Doyen stood alone on the glacier, the aurora fading as sunrise approached. The station behind him seemed incredibly empty. For the first time in weeks, he was truly alone, but not lonely. Never lonely again. Because now he knew what was out there. He knew that the universe was full of people, strange and wonderful people. He knew that kindness could cross the void between worlds. He knew that humans had the capacity to be more than they were. He walked back into the station,